This is CJ with the Goat Sports Talk. Of course, wanted to talk about the Dallas Cowboys situation. Of course, we know about the suspension of Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games. We're going to kind of get more on some NFL talk. Of course, we know the preseason kicked off. I'm not really too big of a fan of it. I really just like the season to get started. But we're definitely going to discuss various topics with different teams. And first, we're going to start off with the Dallas Cowboys. And really the situation with Ezekiel Elliott and how it could affect their team. Now, the thing about what I feel about the Ezekiel Elliott thing in regards to the NFL, there's a lot of stuff that's wrong here. And I think if you're anybody who really is, understands, just the legality around things, it just doesn't make sense and it doesn't look good for the NFL. For one, we know that historically that there's been players that have had issues with domestic violence, and in no way am I a supporter of domestic violence on either side, whether it be the man or on the woman or the woman on the man, okay? Because we got to be fair here. All this stuff that was going on with Ray Rice, that was violence that was happening on both sides. It's that, of course, we know that Ray Rice had got pretty much kicked out of the league for that situation. And it was basically both of them that were mutual in the violence. And we do know, of course, that someone who's way stronger than another person, especially in regards to man versus woman, that it's going to leave more damage, on the woman in these type of situations. We also have had situations in the past in which players were actually killed by their own significant others or wives or girlfriends. One of those being was one of the players that played for Cincinnati Bengals. His name escapes me, but this is during the time when Chad Ochocinco was there. He was one of their receivers. He was one of their top 3 receivers on their team. I believe it was, T.J. Houshmandzadeh, which a lot of you guys, if you've been watching the league for a while, if you're older, you'll remember the guy. And then you also remember Chad Ochocinco, who is also known as Chad Johnson. And of course, if you remember during that time, your own Carson Palmer was the quarterback of the Cincinnati Bengals at that time, and there was a player who had some off-the-field issues at times. His name escapes me, but if you know it, please put it in the comment board. He was actually killed by his own girlfriend. Okay, and I know a guy personally that played for the Cincinnati Bengals. Actually, one of my friends that played and was on that team at the time, okay, when that happened. So this is something that can happen to a player. And I think when you look at the investigation of the Columbus Police Department, they did a thorough investigation and found that her claims of abuse were not basically true. And one of those information being was the text messages of the threats of her against Ezekiel Elliott, who is, one of the bright rising stars in the league. He is probably the top best young running back in the league right now. I mean, there's no question about it. He had an amazing rookie year. He's set to basically be one of the more lauded players in the league, especially playing for the Dallas Cowboys. And we're not haven't gotten to Dak Prescott as far as that combination between the two in that offensive line. So, I mean, you're looking at a situation where, and this happens. Listen, man, I went to a big time college. I'm not going to go into what college it was, but I'll just say this. It is one of the biggest big time schools in the country, if not probably the biggest, when it comes to college athletics. I'll put it that way. And I'm not talking about necessarily in terms of success, but I'm talking about in terms of dollars. I'm talking about and success. The name, the brand. I've seen it, and I've known people. I've known the both sides. I've known guys that were big time athletes and that got into the league, and I know their situation. You know what I'm saying? I know what they're dealing with, and one of the guys in particular, I'll give you an example of a guy that I knew that was in a situation. Because remember, Ezekiel Elliott was a college football player at the Ohio State University. We're talking about a big, super big time college when it comes to sport, college athletics. Like, it's not even a game up there, And these guys are looked at as meal tickets for these women. And and a lot of people don't know how devastating it is for a girl that's with a guy. Now, mind you, I guarantee you, because I know these situations. It was an open situation. That's his girl, but he had woman on the side, but that was his main chick. That's how they roll. And these girls will put up with that stuff and will put up with other things in order to basically hope that they'll be taken to that draft day. Because if a chick is taken on draft day as the girl and with the family, she's basically good. Like, and what happens is, if these guys don't want these women, like, they're like, looks, you're cute, you're good looking or whatever, it was fun, nice knowing you, but I want to move on. I'm about to be a millionaire. I'm about to be talking to, better chicks. I might, you might end up talking to an actress. I mean, this is the type of guys that will be able to talk to women that are making their own money, so or women that are famous, women that they've always wanted to get at, because these are young men. They're thinking like young men. They're thinking, man, if I had money, oh man, I'd be hanging out with this person or that person. So a lot of times these guys want to shake these women off before they go into the draft, and that stuff can backfire because these women get so devastated over it. So I'll put it like this: with the Ezekiel Elliott situation, I knew a girl that was dating a guy that was going to go pro. Okay. This girl was like a friend of mine. She basically started dating this guy when she was a freshman. Me and her were both freshmen. Me and her were friends. We were just good friends, and I remember her telling her what she told me outright. What she wanted to do. One of her accomplishments was outright saying, "Hey, I'm looking to get one of these guys that are, she wants to be basically a baller's wife, like legitimately. She's not to go and take a guy's money, half all that. I know this girl." And I'm gonna show you how she kind of bounced back and recovered. But I'll put it like this: we're a freshman. She was dating a guy who was a big time athlete, okay, and he was basically like kind of like an all conference style player. He wasn't necessarily like a first team, second team All American, but he was a conference level player. He also had a lot of background, like some of his own relatives. I'll put it like that. In his background were major, big-time, prominent sports figures globally. Like, I'm talking about people that, when you say the name, this is like, you're talking about like someone within his family that he's kin to is one of the biggest names in the 21st century of sports, period. We'll just put it like that, because I don't want to go into those details of someone finding out who I'm talking about and things like that. But I'll just say this: he was about to get drafted. And that season he had an injury, which hurt his draft stock. He would have been a first round pick, but it hurt his draft stock. He ended up getting drafted in the second round. I won't say the team that he got drafted to, but when he was getting ready to prepare for the draft, doing his workouts and things like that, he just straight dumped his girl. No reason, just dumped her. And it's understandable, because from his family that he's from, they're very much aware of gold diggers and situations and stuff like that. So he was privy to that with the kind of family he comes from and the kind of like connects athletically he has. And they'll a lot of times just tell him, "Hey, listen, don't take this girl. This girl is young, and she's only 19. She's a freshman. You're 22. You're trying to go on to the league and play professionally. You might not stick in the NBA, then you might have to play overseas, and this girl's going to school and you don't want to change." They want to be sensitive to that. Well, long story short, he dumps her and the girl's devastated. Like, I didn't know about it because, I'm back home for the summer. I get back freshman year and, she's basically gained a whole bunch of weight. I get back sophomore year and she's gained a bunch of weight because she was just in a straight depression. Thinking about how this chick was with Ezekiel Elliott, she was devastated. And that devastation for some woman could either make them say, you know what, they're just going to bounce back and try and get another guy, which is what this girl that I was friends with, she ended up doing that and ended up a couple of years later getting another guy that was an athlete and marrying him, and they're happily married. And In fact, the guy that she married, I actually knew at certain points growing up, through, a mutual family friends, I'll put it like that. So, and she ended up marrying him, and they have a, seems to be a solid relationship and everything, and she's not trying to break him off and take half. She really wants to just be a baller's wife and live that lifestyle and be truly 100% supportive of her man. And she was one of those girls that was, she kept it real, and she's not one of those women that likes to wreck men. She just wasn't raised like that. She was, so a very rare situation where you could see where you really can't hate on a chick when she has the qualities of being able to really truly be a supportive athlete wife, which she is currently right now and has been for some time. So back to the whole thing with the legal issue, and this is more of a commentary piece, of course. The thing about it is that I think the NFL stepped in their bounds on their own investigation, in which a police department did not find anything. The story, the incident so-called happened well over a season ago. So we're talking about even before he even started playing for the Cowboys. And you're going to dig up something from way back then that he got pressed no charges on. The evidence was not conclusive that he did anything wrong. And then you're going to basically put a 6-game suspension, which means suspension without pay. He's slated to lose $8 million of guaranteed money because of the suspension. Now, we do know he's going to appeal, which more than likely they might reduce it to 4 games, maybe 3 games. But 6 games in a 16-game season is a lot of games. Okay? You're roughly talking about, about 40% of the games gone. So he's going to lose all that money. They're going to lose all those games of having one of the best young running backs in the league. And it's just crazy, to think about it, that the NFL can overstep their boundaries and look back over a year before and still try and get a guy on some stuff that the police department didn't even charge him on. So that, to me, if you're an NFL player, that something like that could not go down in the NBA. In the NBA, they can't do that. In the NFL, they can do that. And that tells me that the Players Association of the NFL, y'all have a tall task at hand. Because this right here should make every player upset. Because if you're falsely accused as a player of doing something you didn't do, and the NFL can go back and just say, you know what, we're just going to say you did it and suspend you and take your money and hurt your team's chances of, being in the playoffs Super Bowl, that's a big problem. And I don't think guys really understand that. I really don't think you got guys, because, the reason why I'm doing this, because you got, guys that are not keeping it all the way real. Guys on ESPN and Fox Sports. See, that's the reason why y'all got to support independent sports platforms, such as this platform, because we're going to keep it real with what's really going on and why some of these things is bad. These things that I'm saying, you cannot say on ESPN or Fox Sports. You can't do it. You can't do it. They're not going to let you talk that way. So you got to understand, and a lot of you got people that are watching these sports is a lot of you young men. So you have to get an angle that's not watered down and appeasing to this type of incidents and situation. You can't do that, and you can't play to that. It's very dangerous to play to that, because when you start playing to that, you allow that an entity like your own employer can do the same thing and kick and fire you over something that the police never charged you for. And that's a problem. And that's what a lot of people got to have their eyes open on what this really means when you actually support this type of act that's going on. Now, going on from an actual team perspective, performance perspective of what this suspension, let's say he's suspended for 6 games and it's upheld. What does this suspension mean to the Dallas Cowboys and how they will play and their chances in the playoffs? Do I believe that somehow, some way, that this will affect them from being able to win enough games to still be in it by the time he comes back? I don't believe that they will have that much of a fall back. The reason why I say that is because they do have two decent backs. Now, both of these backs are veterans. They did not have good years in 2016, which we'll get into. One of them you're already seeing on screen is Darren McFadden. Now, Darren McFadden is a guy who was loved by Jerry Jones. Of course, Jerry Jones is an Arkansas guy, and Darren McFadden is from Little Rock and went to Arkansas. Now, Darren McFadden was a guy who was supposed to be a big-time running back coming into the league. We know how he was dominant over in, for the Arkansas Razorbacks. He was drafted by Oakland, but it didn't really pan out. I think he had maybe probably one or two decent seasons there. But behind this line, he can have a kind of a resurgence. Okay, now he is 29 years old, which is still relatively young. If he's in good shape, he should be at in his prime. And one thing with the guy that when you're preparing to be the next guy or you're playing behind somebody, you always got to be prepared and prepare yourself in the off season as if you could have your name called to step up. And I think that if he has been prepared, because a lot of guys, one thing a lot of fans don't realize, they look at players and they just think that they just show up on the field and just do their thing. No, these players are working very hard, but some of them aren't working very hard and they stay in because of their talent, but it catches up to them. Now, with this situation, Darren McFadden is only going to be as good as he was prepared himself to be going into the season, because the O-line is there, the quarterback is there, the coach is there from a play calling standpoint, and Jason Garrett. So now, is he prepared? Did he prepare himself to be every down back potentially to take on the load in the event that Ezekiel Elliott went down? We'll see. That's the reason why we also have the other guy, which he was a very good one. Everybody remembers him from when he was with the Washington Redskins, dominating, having great seasons. This is Alfred Morris. Now, Alfred Morris ended up, of course, in Dallas. And I like the fact that Dallas picked up, a bevy of backs, because I think that their foundation of their offense is always going to be their running game with the offensive line that they got. And, you can basically play off of that for Dak Prescott. Alfred Morris is a guy who tends to, he's a very professional guy. He takes care of himself. We know how he basically was able to rise up as one of the better running backs in the league after being drafted in the 6th round. And so he has a great story. So I believe that for him, that's a good thing as well. Now, if you look at the 2 seasons of Darren McFadden, which you already saw the Darren McFadden one, he only rushed about 87 yards for the year. Okay? And Alfred Morris rushed only for 243 yards for the year. So we're talking about 2 backs that did not have productive years are the last season and are now called on to take on a heavier load because Ezekiel Elliott's out. That could probably be a problem. So to me, it will not hurt Dallas if these guys prepared themselves in the offseason and they've gotten the rhythm of that line and they can put together. If they can put together a good enough running attack together, they can offset some of the stuff that they would face, not having, Ezekiel Elliott. So we'll see how they adjust to this. This is pretty much, what it is right now. This is just a commentary update on Ezekiel Elliott, what I felt about how they can go moving forward. Of course, we're not going to talk about the whole team. We don't need to talk about defense, but I'm talking about just from a perspective of how the offensive unit was going to carry and handle their situation without him. So let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.